Welcome to Death and Aliens, an in-depth look at horror and sci-fi TV from two friends who vaguely know what they're doing. I'm MK,
And I'm Courtney.
and Courtney, how are you?
Well, I am thriving. It was my first full week not at the bar. So it has been officially 7 days since I worked there, which has been just splendid. Like I told you, I'm prepared for today. I have my coffee, my iced tea, and my wine because we're knocking some episodes out since we're both getting ready to go on vacation. Um, and this week I just spent a lot of time at concerts, like a lot of like shows, like local stuff, not anything crazy. Um, I went to two of Caitlin's shows. One was an originals, which was very cool. I'm sure one day in the near future I will post a video on one of my social medias. But my automatic go to is I just take all the videos and then just like send them to her and then never look at them again. But
Right.
surely I'll like post something so the rest of the world can be involved. Yeah, and then I did my meetings with my clients. I met with Jack, I met with Caitlin. I had a great time. I feel like we're really like getting the ball rolling. And then Friday, I went to another show for Bettina Hershey and the Scooches, which is my t-shirt today. We just signed them
Yay!
we're signing them on Monday. By the time this comes out, they'll have been signed.
Nice.
But we're signing them and they're just incredible. So like very bohemian feeling, but like the music is not that way. It's a lot of bluegrass, a lot of like gospel
Yeah,
sound, a bit of like folksy stuff, a little bossa nova. Like it's wild. And so I went
I
down
love
this really
that.
cute bar called Zinc Bar on Friday, which used to be the Cinderella Club, which I had never heard of,
Nope.
but it's one of, if not the longest running music venue in New York City.
Very
So
nice.
very cool. Um, yeah, so I've just been like really diving into all my music this week and
And
doing a lot of work outside of work, but stuff that's fulfilling and not just like draining me
draining.
down. Yeah.
Nice.
So how are you?
I got my car back immediately after we recorded this
Nice.
podcast, basically. No, like last week I was having the worst day ever, worst weekend ever. But my car came
Hmm.
back and it was ex almost exactly what I thought was wrong with it. But then it was cheaper than I thought it was going to be to fix it. So that was lovely. And I officially
Yeah.
got in contact with the Department of Education at my school to go back for classes. So I will be
Nice.
starting my second, well, it's not a whole second master's program. It's just an additional certification on my master's program, but I will be starting that in the fall.
Congrats. That's so exciting.
Well, okay, I haven't officially put the application in yet, but like, because I just didn't fill out the
Whatever.
paperwork, but yeah.
Right.
So yeah, so that
That's
was
very
those
exciting.
were my
I'm
exciting
so proud
things.
of you.
It was like a very good, exciting week, but like also in like the most boring businessy way.
I get that. Totally get that.
So, so it was like all these good things happen, but they're not like exciting stories. It's just like, here are the
Eh,
things that I did. I love it.
you do what you can. You do what you can.
Exactly. But in terms of just doing what we can, because if anyone
Hmm.
could see the lead up to us actually getting to record today, you would know that in life we're just doing what we can. Um,
Well,
how
don't
can
worry. You're going to
we
get a sneak peek.
how can we do better?
So here's the thing. I just realized all of my quotes I saved are on my phone. So I will have really terrible quality camera for like 2 seconds while I tell you how we can be more spiritual. So
We were
it's fine
so
though. It's fine.
prepared. So prepared.
I'm so prepared. I have all of this information and then I didn't put it in the right place. Um, da-da-da. Okay. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. She was unstoppable, not because she did not have failures or doubts, but because she continued on despite them. Bo Taplin.
I'm obsessed.
Me too. I worked hard for these spiritual quotes.
Yeah.
We're recording two Stargates today, so I'm doing two quotes. But I worked hard
Yeah.
for these today.
I
Okay,
love
let's
it.
switch back to like better camera. So if you're
Oh.
listening, you're fine. If you're watching, sorry.
While Courtney's fixing her face, there you go. Beautiful.
There's thank you.
We are going to be talking today about Stargate SG-1 Season 3, Episode 19. And if you will remember our teaser from last week, Courtney had watched the episode and I had not, which is never how that goes.
Isn't that
Um,
wild?
Wild. And the teaser was that you won't care. And you won't. So let's just do this.
Nice mug.
Thanks. The episode was called New Ground, and it was rated 7.5 stars, which is like a solid
Too high.
point. Yeah, but it's a solid point lower than last week. Like last week was like 8.5. This was like, no.
I guess. I guess fair.
It's like the second lowest of the season.
What was the lowest again?
I don't remember. I know it was 6.9, but I don't remember which episode it was.
This
It
was
was
this episode wasn't terrible. It just
no,
wasn't
that's the thing. That's the thing is it wasn't
helpful.
terrible, but this season has been so good and so consistent that it
Mm-hmm.
feels terrible because of what it's up against. If this episode had been in season one, we would have been like, oh my
Oh,
gosh, this is an 8 point episode.
absolutely. No question.
So, oh no, Seth was only rated 7.2. And then, oh, the demons one was the one that was
So
6.9.
I still think about Seth. I feel like that might have been rated lower than I feel like it should have been than I felt like
Agree.
before.
But I also think that the demons episode is rated lower than it should have been because while the
Mhm.
episode itself might not have even been great, I think there are themes that were presented in that episode that are important, like even to like next week's episode.
Yeah. Well, that's how I feel kind of about Seth is like I when I watched it did not care. It was fine.
Yeah.
Love a cult. Love a cult.
Right.
But every like I keep deep like I just go off on spirals all the time and I keep just finding how like Set or Seth or
Yeah.
whatever like iteration of the name is
So
so
good.
prominent and
Yeah.
like so I'm like oh my
Well,
gosh that was like such a big deal but
yeah,
it
no,
didn't feel
and
like it at all.
we'll get into it in next week's episode because next week's episode I have so much to say. But even the demons episode, I literally it took me like 3 hours, 4 hours to watch two episodes of Stargate today because I just kept pausing it to talk to my mom about like deep philosophical and moral issues I was having,
Mm-hmm.
including about the way religion is portrayed in this show, but like not from an angry point of view, I was like, for a show that is not religious or political, these comments that it's making are very religious and
Okay,
political.
it's quote unquote not religious or political.
Right. I was like, but these comments that it's making are very this episode not so much. So like we're gonna rein that back in. But
Yeah.
it came out on February 18th, 2000. The top book was the same. No, that says the top song was the same. Top song was the same. The top book, because I was like, why is John Grisham written for this song then? Nope, it's not. The top song was the same. The top book was The Brethren by John Grisham. I don't know anything about it except for that it's a thriller about the CIA and it's by John Grisham. So like
I could have
that's
told
what
you all of that because it's by John Grisham. Like,
exactly. Yeah.
you know,
Um, so and the top movie um, could only have been the top movie for about 45 minutes because I swear to God, I've never heard of this in my entire life. It was called Hanging Up,
okay.
and it was a comedy starring Diane Keaton, Meg Ryan, and Lisa Kudrow playing sisters.
And I haven't heard of this.
Exactly. Like the fact that it was the three of them playing sisters in 2000, and I don't know what it is, means it must have been awful.
Right, right.
So that's why I think it came out this day. Everybody flocked to
Hmm.
see it because it was the three of them. They realized it was trash and then it never touched the top again. Like that is how that played out in my mind because I've
Yeah.
literally never heard of this.
And this is like roughly Valentine's weekend, and this is probably like a rom-com if I had to guess based on the cast. And
Yeah.
so like I'm sure this was like the Valentine's weekend movie everybody went to see. So that
Right.
definitely
That
tracks.
makes sense. Also, I lied when I said that this episode did not have huge political and religious undertones. This is the episode that I have things to say about that. I have a lot to say about the other episode too, but like this is the now that I'm looking at what I just wrote, I'm
Hmm.
completely lying to you. Um, what happened on this day? The only thing I could find was that there was a lot of controversy in the news due to a mandated anthrax vaccine in the US military.
Never heard about this anthrax vaccine, and I definitely remember the anthrax scare.
Right. Same. But then I was like watching this episode and some of the things that they were saying, and knowing that this came out at a time where we were worried about anthrax, and I was like, oh my God. The episode was bad, but the like not bad. The episode was not great, but there was a lot happening.
There was a lot
Also,
happening.
there's a lot happening in the next couple weeks with directors because I don't know what happened here. But this episode was directed by a man named Chris McMullen.
No,
He
that's not a
it's
person we know.
it's not. He is known
Okay.
primarily for his work in the camera department. He was a Steadicam operator as his main job. He has worked in the camera department and this show for quite some time. He has about 4 cinematography credits, and this singular episode is his only directing credit ever of his career.
All right. Stargate
I
was like,
have
sure, take a chance. You've been here for ages. Go for it.
Right. I have heard of people in the editing department and the writing department moving into directing. I've heard of
Right.
actors moving into directing. What I have never heard of is a steady cam operator moving
Yeah.
into directing and then never doing it again.
Yeah. He was like, I'm going to give it a go. And he was like, not for me.
Not
It's
for me.
fine.
Yeah. The only information I could find about him, I did stalk his LinkedIn and still found no information about him, except for that his nickname is Gramps.
Oh, Gramps.
Yeah. So Graham started this episode,
That's cute.
and I don't know anything else about him. Um, it was written by Heather Ash, who we have had before, and it was edited by Brad Rhymes. Our guest star is Richard Ian Cox. He played Nyan, and he is known for Dino Trucks, Spy Kids Mission Critical, and My Little Pony Friendship is Magic.
Which Spy Kids was that? Was that like one of the
That's
films or was
that's
that
the cartoon
the
series. That's
okay.
the cartoon series, yeah.
That's what I was gonna
Because
ask.
if you could not tell from those lists, he really only does voice work.
That's what it sounds like, yeah.
Um,
Good for him though. Find your niche.
yeah, he is originally Welsh, which you would not know from listening to him talk in this episode. But
Mm-mm.
also, my favorite weird fact, I have 2 weird facts about him. One, because he's Welsh, this is weird. He has a tattoo that is the Welsh dragon holding the British flag. Now, I don't know if you know a lot about the inter-country politics in the United Kingdom, but most people who love Wales enough to have the Welsh dragon tattooed on them don't want Wales
Don't
to be
like
a part of United Kingdom anymore.
no.
Um,
They
so
seem
the
much
fact,
friendlier with Ireland from my experience.
yeah, yeah, like to the point where when Prince Charles, King Charles now, but when Prince Charles was installed as the Prince of Wales, literally he had to go to school in Wales for like 6 months and learn Welsh for them to be okay with him being named the Prince of Wales because they don't like England. So the fact that this
Mhm.
man who lives in Canada and works in the US film industry has a Welsh dragon with a British flag tattoo is just the most baffling combination of things that I could have ever like put together.
Yeah,
But
that
it
is very strange.
gets weirder when I tell you my other fun fact, just to make this man more of an enigma. When he
Mhm.
was 16, he was basically adopted as a surrogate grandson by another actor, and he then worked very closely with and basically became family with this actor and like hung out with him for the rest of his life. And that man was Mickey Rooney.
I was ready for you to tell me someone from that was French, and I was like, all right, fine, whatever. Nothing makes sense anymore. But this also doesn't make sense anymore. So, wow,
So, Richard
that
E.
is
Cox, he
interesting.
also has four children. I don't think his wife is famous. I looked at her name and it meant nothing to me, so I don't think she's famous.
Great.
Um, but yeah, so just a weird, weird man.
Hmm.
But yeah. And now for a weird, weird episode. So we start with some people excavating a gate that starts to activate, and they have no idea what's going on. SGC sends a Melp through, and Nyan, the boy who was excavating the gate, tries to like feel the gate, and that is the funniest thing of him like sticking his hand in there and being like, it doesn't feel like water.
No,
Sweet baby. Um,
no, sweetie, it's not.
We find out that Sam programmed the computer to periodically redial cartouche addresses that hadn't worked in the past. And because of the unburying, this was the first cold dial that actually hit. And that feels like a detail we should have had earlier. That Sam is just like, I'm just going to keep trying.
I totally missed that that's how they got here because,
Yeah.
first of all, it's a week ago. But that feels like an important thing because, like, this definitely sets us. I do not know if this is where we're going, obviously. This totally sets us up to hit in a really scary area where, like, Apophis is already at. Apophis goes in. I don't know, whatever. Will
Right.
go
No,
in
but
and,
like,
like, bring out the Stargate and they show up in, like, this
right. Like
massive
places that they've
battle.
already buried. What about the places that they
Yeah.
buried the gate for safety?
Right. And then they come right. And then they come back. And then
Yeah.
I'm just saying this really sets us up for a lot. So it should have been, I don't know if they're gonna do it. And if they don't, missed opportunity. But
Right.
yeah,
Then the Malp sees Nyan and Daniel like tries to talk to him through the Malp. And they start to have a conversation and he is not scared or like phased by the Malp. He's just like, are you a mechanical being? And so Daniel's like, well, they have technology and they understand things, so we should obviously go talk to them.
sure, sure.
Which is not the craziest conclusion Daniel's ever come to, but it's also not the best.
No.
And Jack goes, so how about we don't? Because I spy with my little eye, not a DHD.
Again, good one for Jack. Like that is
Yeah.
very important information. And they like I feel like they just didn't harp on that enough. Like they mentioned it, they get there, they mention it again, and then they never like mention it again
Yeah.
until towards the end, I felt like.
So General Hammond is like, okay, I am authorizing the mission, but you also need to take a Nakoda reactor with you to power up the gate if the
Mhm.
DHD is nowhere to be found.
Right.
Okay, cool. We have contingency plans.
Which is important.
Yeah. Daniel tells Naya that they're going to come through, and Malin, who is the girl who was with him, runs away to tell the others. And Nyan is like, please don't do that. They're going to kill them all.
Such a tattletale.
Right. So they come through the gate, and Nyan is shocked to find out that they're human. And we learn so much about this planet. We learned that on this planet there are two rival continents, which is the first time that anyone has ever addressed the idea of people living in multiple places on a planet, which I have harped on before. um,
Everyone
and
aside from you.
yeah, and on this planet, there are two rival continents. They have differing theories about history, which the trivia for this episode said that that is an allusion to creationism versus Darwinism in terms of how they think the two things got there. I personally felt like it was much more a comment on the war in the Middle East.
Mm. See, I'm not familiar with the war in the Middle East in the 2000s. I assume it's similar to now because things don't change much,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
right, right.
But I do definitely see the like creationism versus evolution. I think that
Do
is like
too. I do too. When I
pretty
read that,
spot
I was
on.
like, okay, I see that. When I read the thing, I saw that. But and in the moment where they just explain what the two theories are, I for sure got that. But a lot of
Hmm.
it was had to do later with the way the commander was dealing with the concept of the war that I was like, oh, this is
Yeah,
cool,
that
great.
makes sense. Yeah,
But
very well could be both.
so the continents are at war, and basically one continent, the one that these people are from and are currently on, believe in the quote unquote creationism story, and they believe that they have always been here and that this planet is the first planet that humans existed on, and blah blah blah. And the other people believe that there was a gateway and that aliens brought them to this planet for them to settle.
Mhm.
Nine's people arrive and attack SG-1, but Teal'c and Nyan get away. Um, Nine's people are called Petrosians or Petrosians. I didn't actually know how they said it, but I also have a friend whose last name is Petrosi, so I just kept writing Petrosians and like Petrosians, and I was like, that's for sure not what they're called, but that's what I'm gonna
That's
write
okay.
because, um, but
We
so
can call them that. It's okay.
so Teal'c and the Petrosian shoot each other, and Teal'c is not looking so hot.
Yeah.
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 Malin tells the leader back at the with the rest of the SG-1 team. Malin tells the leader what happened, and he like doesn't believe her, and he assumes that the SG-1s are objectrons. I also don't know what the other continent was called. They kept saying like things that made it sound like they
Hmm.
were called object people, and I was like, I don't know
Right.
what that means. Um,
That's
so
okay.
the object people using psychological warfare to mess with them and like convince them that this piece of like archaeological whatever was the gateway just to like cause more problems. So Jack is like, okay, but if we tell you how to use it and like show you how the gate works, you can believe us. And if it doesn't actually work, then we'll just take our stuff and leave and no skin off our backs.
No harm, no
And
foul.
instead, they
Said
stab him in the
no.
neck with needles and knock him
Yeah.
back out because
Hmm.
that's
Hmm.
um he puts them in a quarantine field, which is apparently some kind of weird force field that you cannot get to on the ground. You have to fly into it.
Yeah.
Nyan finds Teal'c back on the other side there and says that they need to get out of there, but Teal'c refuses to leave the rest of the team because Teal'c will never leave the rest of the team. And then we find out that Teal'c is blind.
Which like blew my mind because, little junior usually heals pretty quickly. And this feels like a one-stop type thing because he's had like multiple parts of his body like broken or injured and they like relatively healed quickly together. And this is just your eyes. Like I understand it's connected to your brain stems and whatnot, but like it's just one part. It should have healed faster, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay.
But no, no, no. Yeah, you were absolutely right to be concerned by that. We find out later why, like, it actually happened and like what was going on. But yeah, no, the first thought of Teal'c being blind is very concerning because the only reason Teal'c wouldn't heal is if something was happened to Junior.
Mm-hmm.
And if something happens to Junior,
Till just dies.
yeah.
Right.
Um, Back in the quarantine field with the Petrosians, blood analysis comes back and proves that SG-1 is human, but they don't have any of the blood markers that the Petrosians have. So, like, they're not from there. And so the leader, who I believe his name was Rhaegar,
I just called him leader guy.
I called him leader guy for most of it. And then toward the end, I realized that some of the soldiers were actually calling him something, and I'm pretty sure it was
Ah,
Rhaegar. But Rhaegar says that just proves that they're the object people, and the medical officer's like, but like, what if they're not?
what
And
if we use some
this,
logic?
And this is where I felt like it was a very intense political statement because his response was, first of all, he said, I have read the book from beginning to end. I know it's true. And that felt hella like
Religion.
a statement on radicalized religion.
Hmm.
Like in all cases of like not just
Yeah.
one religion, but
Yeah.
in all cases of radicalized
Absolutely.
religion. That was a statement. And then his follow up to his own personal conviction was that he would not be wrong about this war because then he couldn't, as a leader, justify the war anymore. And that was a political statement on foreign powers in the Middle East
Yeah.
if I have ever heard one.
Yep. That tracks. That tracks.
Because if you
War for
remember,
war's sake, not for any real reason. It's
Because if you
fine.
remember, 2000, which you said you don't know a lot about where the Middle East was in the early 2000s, but for those of you who need a quick history refresher, 2000 was about the time where the US had just finished aiding the Taliban to get rid of the Soviet powers taking over Afghanistan. Well, they weren't, the Soviet were Russia again by that point, but Soviet powers, the Taliban helped free Afghanistan. The US helped with that, and then the Taliban took over, and we all know what happened next.
Fun fact, very, very brief, I promise. Please go read into this because there's a lot more that I didn't know about. You may know, but I didn't know about the with Afghanistan before 2000,
Mm-hmm.
2001. It
Mm-hmm.
was like uh mid 90s. Like this had already like they had already tried to attack us and people just like didn't listen. And it was bin Laden like the whole time. And there was like one
Yeah.
guy who ended
So,
up sadly dying in 9/11. Very
yeah.
small, brief history. Go, everyone, go look into it.
Well, so the book that my sixth graders are reading right now is a fiction book, but it's based on a true family, like a family and things that happened to Afghani people. But the
Mhm.
father in this book left, like was living in the US, getting his PhD in agriculture, and then he went back to Afghanistan to aid the Taliban when the Taliban was trying to destroy the poppy fields in Afghanistan that were leading to the rampant use of um, opioids and the drug trade taking over Afghanistan. The Taliban got into power by trying to release the country from the drug trade and then just kept
Mm,
going.
interesting. Yeah.
Just
Yep.
like
There's so much
just
that I
I mean,
had
but it's
no
like
idea
just like
about.
Hitler got into power by trying to aid the country
Sure.
from the fall of World War One and then kept going. People
Yeah.
are always like, how could we let this happen? Nobody just lets that happen like that. It happens a little bit at a time. And so, like, this
Hmm.
guy who was like, I refuse to be wrong because then decades of people dying will mean nothing.
Yep. Yeah.
Even if you don't accept that you're wrong, the decades of people dying still means nothing because the war has to end eventually
Yeah.
and somebody has to lose.
Yeah. Yeah. Ah,
I was so
the world.
stressed out watching just that scene. Just that scene. I was like,
Yeah, I did not even compare and contrast because I didn't know the specifics enough for the year 2000.
yeah.
But it all makes
I-
sense, all tracks.
And then I was like also getting mad because I was like the whole idea of like who, which the fight over whether someone was created there or just brought there, and then the whole like question of Israel and Palestine and who is right in that. And like, I was just like, this is so aggressively political without ever even saying anything that's happening in the real world that I literally, that's why it took me 2 hours to watch this episode because I was having like an existential crisis.
That's totally okay. So many of these
And I also
episodes.
thought about the fact that this episode was 23 years old and we are still in the middle of that same existential crisis in the Middle East.
Right. Right. That's why when you said that, I was like, I think that's still now is still similar to then, but I just don't know
Mm,
enough about then to
mm,
know.
uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Great. Love it.
love to see nothing changing in the world.
Yep. And people still dying senselessly. It's fine. Totes fine.
For those of you on audio only, that was just really awkward moment of silence that is really only justified if you can see my face. Anyway, so Nyan takes Teal'c to a cave for safety, and tells him a little bit more about the Petrosians' belief. And this book that Rhaegar had been talking about, is a book that says that that Nefertim is their creator. And Teal'c was like, Nefertim, the Blue Lotus? And he was like, yeah, how do you know? And he goes, God fucking damn it. He didn't say that, but he said that.
Verbatim.
Yeah, he was like, nah, fam, actually that's not a god. That's an alien, and I fought him and he's dead now. So don't don't want to be that person.
Um, do we know is Nefertum like an Egyptian god or a Greek god
No,
or
Nefertim, it was another name that Ra used. And that's what Teal'c
that's
is
how we tied
saying.
into Ra at the end.
Yes, that's what Teal'c is saying
Okay.
about, yeah, that's what Teal'c was saying in that thing about Nefertim, the Blue Lotus of Ra. He was talking in his whole little speech there. He was explaining that Nefertim is just Ra. That's how we know he's dead.
Somehow I still kept them as two different people. I knew we mentioned Ra and I was like, I don't know, maybe that was another guy that he was like against, like that
Yes,
Nefertum was
no,
against.
no.
Got it. Got it. Yes. Super done.
It's okay. When he first said Nefertim, I was like, oh yeah, Nefertiti. And then I was like, that's
So that was also my thought. I was like, that's not anything connected.
um actually no, is Nefertim Ra? He's the Nefertim is the blue lotus flower. His parents, does that even mean? Sorry. Nefertim, this quote on Wikipedia that is talking about him says, rise like Nefertim from the blue water lily to the nostril of Ra. I don't know what that means. Nefertim is the
It doesn't mean
daughter,
anything.
Nefertim is the son of Set and Bast and is the god that was worshipped in Memphis. And one of the existing busts we have of King Tut, he is depicted as Nefertim,
So not Ra then.
not Ra.
Interesting.
But they were definitely
Huh.
talking about Ra.
Right.
I think the thing that Teal'c said is what I just read about the nostril of Ra,
Ah.
which is
Hmm.
still confusing to me. I
Yeah.
pretend I know everything about Egyptian mythology, and I
When
don't.
Adam was absorbed by Ra, Nefertum came to be considered as a separate deity,
Oh, so
still closely
Nefertum.
associated with the newborn son. So they are technically related, but
Hmm.
Adam or Adam, Atum, was apparently another one. And then that person was absorbed by Ra. And that's when
Okay,
Nefertum became a separate deity.
which makes sense in Egyptian mythology, but I don't know that that's what they did with the Goa'uld. I because
I don't
who
understand
knows?
that enough to know what they did. And I don't understand what they told me enough to know if they are the same thing or not.
Um.
But I'm on
Uh.
ancientegyptonline.co.uk if anyone's interested in researching more.
Yeah. I just want to picture Nefertim as a flower that is stuck in Ra's nose. So
I like it.
yeah.
Not
Um.
even like a piercing, just like stuck straight up there.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it.
Um,
Perfect.
he like sniffed a flower and then he sniffed too hard and it got stuck.
And it's like the Lorax flower. It's
Yeah,
got people living on it.
yeah.
Love it.
And the the humans are the people that are now stuck inside.
Absolutely. I love it. We figured it out.
The imagery in my head right now is um anyway, Nine says that he will take Teal'c to see the other scientists as proof so that they'll believe him. And Teal'c's like, I'm not your proof. Like, that is not what this is. My friends are captured. I will save them. And then it's like, oh, your stomach is bleeding. Like, let me help you. And he's like, don't fucking touch me.
Yeah.
So Nyan leaves him alone, and Teal'c's like, "Wait, no, don't leave me!" And he tries to follow, and he gets hurt even more. He walks into a wall, and now his head is bleeding, and it's actually actively bleeding, which is not a thing
Yeah.
that we're used to for Teal'c. And I literally paused the episode, and I was like, "Mom, he needs to find somewhere safe enough to get into Kelno Ream."
That yes, correct. You were correct.
Yeah. The rest of the team are in electric cages. And Teal'c is trapped in the cave and scared, and like they had this weird like scene of him just like basically crying in the cave while everyone else was in the electric cages, and I was like, what are we doing right now? So the angry leader, Rhaegar, is interviewing the SG team, and the graphics on this were a choice as well.
Hmm.
The cutscenes that were happening here, where it was like in the middle of sentences, they were switching who was talking. I was like, I genuinely do not understand the direction of this episode at all. Maybe that's why this
I,
man never directed another thing
I
in his
was
life.
just about to say, I get it now,
Again.
but
Um,
I'm sure he had a very long life as a Steadicam man, though. So, like, find your niche and stick with it if you need to.
right. Um, but Jack is being a jerk, but like in the best way ever. They were like, what is the blue liquid if it's not water? And Jack just goes, magic. And I was like, I partially can't tell if Jack's being a jerk or if Jack just genuinely doesn't understand enough the science enough to say anything else.
I'm gonna guess that. I think because I would also be in that case. I believe I would just be like, yeah, not water. Don't. What is it? Magic. That's it. That's all it is.
um, and then Daniel's like, Neverton's not a god. He's an alien. I don't know how to break it to you, but that is what had happened. And so then
Yeah.
they like shocked him like with a cattle prod. I was like,
Yeah.
um, Nyan returns to the cave and finds Teal'c messing around in his little pouch, trying to check on Junior, and he's like, "You are an alien." And Teal'c's like, "Yeah, about that. The rest of them, promise, they're
Definitely not.
humans. Definitely not aliens. That's all me, all me."
Which
Um,
like doesn't sound very convincing. And like Nan totally, it's like, yeah, totally. Yeah, you're right. I got it. I believe
yeah,
you.
yeah.
It's like,
Um,
okay.
and we find that's when we find out that Junior was severely damaged and will need to like heal itself before it can heal Teal'c. And Nine's like, it's okay though, because I have this thing that I can like laser your eyes and give you your vision back because it helps recreate the nerves that you've lost. And I was like,
Yeah.
where the fuck is that in our technology?
Ugh, truly. Maybe that's what that laser eye technology is when you get rid of your contacts, you
Oh,
go,
basic eye
you know?
surgery?
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
Basically,
Um,
that's what it is. He has LASIK eye
yeah,
surgery.
yeah.
I know stuff.
The Petrosians take Daniel out of the cage and ask him to explain why they have a dead soldier. And he's still like, I could not fucking tell you. And I was like, thank God that for once in his life, Daniel's actually like sticking to the lie. Because
Yeah,
sometimes,
yeah.
sometimes he caves.
Sometimes he
Um,
spirals too. Like, oh man, bless his heart.
so then Nine tells Teal'c that the military will probably just like kill the whole team and destroy the gate. He's like, they don't really like to be wrong.
Right. So like
And
everyone's just gonna die. Like it's fine, but everyone's just gonna die.
they don't really like to be wrong, so they will destroy the evidence was also a comment on The military.
A lot of the not just the military. I don't imagine it expands
No.
to
No, but not I mean
legal.
not just the US military for sure, but I mean like
Yeah,
how much of the British Museum is stolen?
right. Yeah. Hmm.
Great.
Good times.
So the Nine uses the device to repair no, I skipped. Oh, but he wants to use the device and Philip doesn't really trust him because he still thinks he just wants to use him as evidence and that he's trying to further his career. And Nyan says all this stuff about how any scientific advancement is an advancement, whether it is pro what we believes or not. And I was like, wow, that's another comment. Because
So many.
I was like, man, I wish some people would listen to that today. Um, I was just having a field day with this episode. Um, and then so Teal'c was like, I trust you now because that sounds like something Daniel Jackson would say. You must be like a real scientist and not a jerk scientist. So yes, you can use the device to repair my visual cortex. Then back in the quarantine zone, they're basically like electroshocking Jack to death since no one will like give them any answers. And
Yeah, not great.
then all of a sudden, because the team has not checked in, the Stargate activates again. And Hammond goes like opens the gate to communicate and like they use the walkie-talkie and Rhaegar is like, who the fuck are you? And he's like, who the fuck are you?
Yeah.
And then he's like, I want to talk to Jack. And he's like, nope, you can't. And then the Mel is getting images to like picture them in their cages. And oh, and Rhaegar's like still saying that it's a trick. Like he's still like, this isn't real. This is not a gateway to another world. They're just trying to mess with us. It's like the
Right.
denial is strong with that one.
Like there's
Um,
actual evidence, like visual, physical evidence, and you're
right.
still denying
Um,
it. Mm.
Nyan and Teal'c are on their way to the camp to rescue the team now that Teal'c has his eyesight back and he gives Nyan a Zat gun. And Nyan's like, I've never used a weapon before. He's like, you'll figure it out.
At least show him which way to point at, like, and then I guess go
Which
from
that's
there.
the other thing. He was like, I've never held a weapon before. And then he picked up the Zat. And my personal comment was like, I have a Zat and I did not pick it up that correctly the first time. So don't tell me that you've never held a weapon before.
Right,
Props
right.
master.
But he's probably also like never seen any other weapons other than Zat guns. Like we have guns and other things
Yeah.
here, and he probably has no other reference. So he's probably like seen it happen.
Yeah. Um, Rhaegar, once they realize that the Melp is moving to get pictures of the team, Rhaegar basically tells Hammond that if they attempt any rescue, he will just kill all of them. And then he arranges to have them moved to a more secure location. Um, Teal'c and Nyan attack a shuttle to get access to it so that they can fly in, and they deliberately fly like they've never flown a ship before. And I was like, either Teal'c is still blind or he let the dumb kid fly the ship. And my mom just goes, or it was on purpose. And I was like, probably that one because
I
they
mean,
literally they literally hit the side of a mountain and bounced off.
yeah. I mean, but like this kid, like bought in so fast for someone who doesn't know anything about like battle. Like
Yeah,
he's just
yeah.
like, yeah, I believe this one guy who they said they were all humans. Turns out he's an alien, so we've already called him one lie. And
Right.
like he can't see. I don't know if he's any good or not. And he's now telling me everything I've ever known is wrong. I am in. No questions asked.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I'm not gonna lie. That is probably the least believable thing about this episode is that there's
mhm,
no hesitation on Nine's part.
mhm,
Um,
yeah. Mhm.
so then they fly in, they trick the guards, and then it just started attacking everyone. While they're all attacking, Daniel dials the DHD, which they have, by the way, found. Um, and Teal'c uses his GDO to make sure that the iris is open. And then they get Nyan out with them. There's a big battle scene where everybody's shooting each other. They get to the infirmary. Teal'c's okay, and Nyan's okay, and Nyan's going to be allowed to stay as a refugee. And they offer him to do work with Daniel as his research assistant on the
He can't
base.
do anything else. But he's very good at
And
that, so
he is very good
bless
at
his heart.
that. And in news that I would normally not tell you because I guess it would technically be classified as a spoiler, but I don't
We'll
care.
never see
We
him again.
we will never see him
Yeah,
again.
yeah. I figured that out. I didn't look it up, but I did indeed assume that we would never see him again based on the
Yeah,
show's track record. So excellent. Wonderful.
I I
Mm-hmm.
try to
Mm-hmm.
have faith, but this
Yeah.
episode was so poorly received, and the storyline was so unnecessary that we for sure will never see him
Mm-hmm.
again.
Yep.
So other than the thoughts about Christianity and Darwinism and my own notes that I made through the whole episode, there's no trivia.
Yeah.
There is one piece of trivia where people were mad about Nyan specifically saying something about only stunning people and then shooting the same person twice. And I was like, that was an editing mistake. Not a, don't get mad. The character, it was not a character error. He did not kill someone
Yeah.
with a Zat gun. They just edited the clip wrong. I'm
Yeah.
just throwing that one out there. Um, so yeah. Who would you like to punch?
Oh, the leader guy, no question. He was so
Perfect.
stubborn and so wrong that
Yeah.
like, ugh, don't get me started
Yeah.
again because I could yell about him forever.
I am gonna punch Millen because she was
Totally fair.
supposedly a scientist who also
Mm-hmm.
cared about discovering things, but then was like, I'm just gonna immediately run and tell the military.
She's like Kevorkian.
The worst. The
Mm-hmm.
worst.
Kevorkian's
Who?
not the one I was thinking. Who was Hitler's doctor guy that did all the terrible stuff?
Oh yeah. I don't know. Definitely starts with a K. You were right on that part.
Mm.
Um,
Because
my problem
Kevorkian's the
is
one who does like the right to die stuff, and while he's still also very out there, it's a very different situation.
it's a very different out there. My problem is all I can think of is Nuremberg, which is not his name. It's just the trial.
Mm-hmm.
So not
Right.
helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, who is your MVP?
For all the complaining I did about him this episode, Nyan is my MVP because he did really like help save the team and move forward, and they kind of got
Yeah,
what they needed and were safe because of him. Even
absolutely.
though he made terrible life choices for himself, he did make all the right choices for the team. So,
Correct.
you
Um,
know,
I picked Teal'c because despite the fact that he was literally slowly dying in a cave, it was family over everything. He was
yeah,
picking
he
the
would have
team.
been my other
Yeah.
choice for sure.
Um,
These
this was not a very long episode, but to be honest, I think we talked more about my feelings on the political climate of the Middle East than we did about the episode because there wasn't a ton to say about it.
fair,
Uh,
totally fair.
Next week, I will also have a lot of random shit to say about my personal feelings about things. Um,
Great, can't wait.
yeah, because sometimes I just get carried away. But my sneak peek is that we are headed back to the main plot line. So,
Woohoo!
so there's that.
So you have something to look forward to.
Yeah. We also obviously have a Thriller Thursday to look
Thriller
forward to
Thursday.
in between those
Mm-hmm,
two.
mm-hmm.
And I
Coming up on
guess,
the end.
yeah, yeah, we sure are. Yeah, so if you have any thoughts or feelings, if you also felt very strongly about the political or religious commentary in this episode, you can send us an email at deathandaliens@gmail.com or follow us and contact us on any of the social media at Death and Aliens. You can follow me everywhere at EMKAY_superstar.
And you can follow me at CECloud13.
And with that, we'll see you later this week. Bye.
Bye.